by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Ilya able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
And the fans want one. Score! Off the floor! On the board! Paul Kariya!
So, Connor McDavid is good.
Yeah, you just finding that out?
Yeah, the hard way. If you're catching us now on the, I guess, this would be the Wednesday show. We're actually on time on Wednesday. The Ducks played 2 games this week. We actually had some games to talk about this time. And what we kind of feared came true in game number 1. Connor McDavid took over, and the Ducks ended up losing 6-2 to the Edmonton Oilers. And I guess Leon Draisaitl had a hand in there too, but not a fun game for the Ducks, and they followed that up with a 4-3 overtime loss to the Red Wings too, just to kind of wrap a bow on everything.
Yeah, when Zach Cassian's putting in pucks, you know you've hit a low point in the season. So
3-point night for Zach Cassian.
Elite goal scorer Zach Cassian.
Zach Cassian. How many points? I wonder how many points that guy has now.
That's not too bad. I think he scored the following night too. We propelled him into greatness. That's what we do here.
I mean, you're playing with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. That I believe he also gets power play time there, which is just absolutely mental that Cassian gets to play on the power play. But either way, not a great couple of games for the Ducks, because the Oilers game, that was always going to be a tough one. The Oilers are playing some great hockey right now, and Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are two I guess you could say the 2 best players in the league right now, the way they're playing, the way they're putting up points. So that was always going to be a tough one, especially we thought Lindholm was going to be in that game. And then, the news comes out that he has a lower body injury and he misses out on that game. And it was a mix of Holzer and Larson and Fowler and Del Zotto that were matched against Connor McDavid, which neither of them succeeded in that game, which is very difficult. And you would think the only one you would ever maybe want to see against Connor McDavid is Cam Fowler. And, there was one goal. I think it was Connor McDavid's first goal, the short side one, I think.
Yeah.
Gibby. Fowler did a good job of tracking Connor McDavid, pushed him to the outside. The shot still ended up beating John Gibson. So Fowler did okay. Did as much as he could, but you never want to have to see Larson and Holzer, that pairing, the way they've struggled this year, get put against Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And same goes for Michael Del Zotto. So that was tough, not having, I guess, Gooley or Lindholm in that game to kind of throw some reliable options against a player like McDavid.
Yeah, I guess as reliable as you can call it, because you're asking everybody else to literally shut down the top 2 players in the NHL, and our top player is an offensive guy. He's not really strong defensively, and all the other guys who might have they're in the repertoire to play more defensive than offensive aren't at that level. So we're asking 5 and 6 defensemen to play 1 and 2, and stop the top 2 best players in the league, arguably right now. So it was a tall order to ask, and that's why I'm not too surprised that we maybe struggled a little bit. Throw in there that we had about 4 days off in between games. That's a first for us. And then Gibby really just didn't look good. It was just an off game, and that will happen from time to time. So that's a perfect mixture to get blown out, and that's what happened.
Yeah, that's a tough one, and we kind of, I don't want to say I didn't expect a 6-2 loss to the Oilers, but you expected it to be a difficult game to shut down Connor McDavid. But then you go in against the Detroit Red Wings, the way they're playing this year, you didn't want to say this was a must-win game or a game that they should easily win, but it was. It was a game that, especially after getting embarrassed by the Oilers, you should come into this game. It's still at home. You've got a day off between that Oilers loss. It should have been a game that the Ducks showed up for, and they get 2 goals early on in the second period that felt like things were turning around for them after a pretty solid first. They get two goals in the first 49 seconds of play in the second period, both that were a little bit controversial and kind of got reviewed a little bit, but they end up counting. Josh Mahura gets his first of the season. But from there on, Detroit took over that game, which you can't have happen. And Detroit does have some weapons, and we mentioned this on the last podcast. Guys like Andreas Athanasiou and Dylan Larkin, Tyler Bertuzzi, Anthony Mantha, and those were the guys that factored in to the Red Wings, ended up coming back and winning this game in overtime. It's a tough one because you don't want these types of games to happen. You want them to be able to go out and beat one of the teams who right now statistically are one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah, but the only thing is, it's kind of the, tale of 2 seasons, 3 seasons already for Detroit. They started off pretty good. I want to say they started off something like 3-1-1. I know that's just to start off the season. They started off decent, and then they went 1-11 and something. But they had won the 2 games prior to this, so they almost kind of were starting to turn it around a little bit. And it kind of felt like both teams, although it different expectations for the seasons, they both felt like this is the one that, hey, we got to win. And you could tell that with Getzlaf and how pissy he was getting, especially with Mantha, which was fun to watch. But, you kind of like to see it result in a win. And it just kind of felt like another one of those games that got away. Another, they had 2 separate 2-goal leads that they couldn't hold on to. They had a 2-goal lead against Minnesota, kind of a similar team that, we should be beating, but we just couldn't hold the lead. And it's kind of that thing where they show up for 40 minutes in and out of a game, and it tends to kind of bite them in the ass, and they end up losing because of the other 20 minutes. So.
Yeah, there were definitely positives in that game, and obviously, Silfverberg getting on the board again and having his 8th of the season is a positive for the Ducks to see him continue scoring. And then Josh Mahura getting his first of the season after getting called up, sent back down, and then called back up into the lineup. It's nice to see him get on the board, and then obviously Brendan Gooley coming back, recalled into the game, and having a pretty decent game, especially with no Hampus Lindholm. He's kind of going to be a guy that you're going to lean on. So there were some positives in that sense, but allowing Detroit to get back into the game when you're up 2-0, and then tying the game late in the third when, for some reason, Dallas Eakins felt like I should put out Korbinian Holzer and Jakob Larsson to defend a 3-2 lead in the last 1 minute and 30 of the game on a penalty kill. And Holzer takes another penalty, and the Wings end up eventually tying the game. And some suspect decisions, but I guess that comes with the territory when you're pretty thin on the blue line at this point, and your options outside of Larsson and Holzer are Del Zotto and Goodbranson and Josh Mahura and Cam Fowler. You can't play Cam Fowler 40 minutes a night, and you can't play especially Josh Mahura that much, as well as being a younger player. You're not going to play him over 25 minutes a night, so it's tough. And Josh has his own adventures sometimes in the defensive zone, so it's an interesting choice for sure, and it's a game I think they're going to want back. But the big thing for that game is, I think, announced prior to that game, or maybe just after the Oilers game, is that Hampus Lindholm's on the IR, lower body injury. That's it. That's as vague as we got in news in terms of what's going on with Hampus Lindholm. Big loss for the Ducks in these 2 games. You could definitely see it, especially against the Oilers with Connor McDavid, but a big loss as well in the game against Detroit. A little bit offset by the news that Brendan Gooley comes back, but it always seems like this year so far we get one back and we lose another. We got a couple guys back, and then Josh Manson went down.
And I'm a little upset at myself, because I really believe that guy they brought in might actually help us circumvent some of these injuries. And we're right back to where we were last year, missing significant players for a significant amount of times. Kasha's already been out with some mysterious jaw injury that's not a concussion, but he's missed a whole bunch of games. At least at this point, some of the bigger players have hung in there and haven't gotten injured, but our defense is being decimated. We're picking up guys wherever we can just to try and plug the holes for as long as we can, and just not going to seem to ever catch a break no matter who we hire to help prevent things. It just seems like it's inevitable. The workload or whatever happens within a game seems to be a little bit too much. So sad.
One day One day this
One
year we'll
day,
get all
one
these guys
day,
back
that'll
healthy,
happen.
and we'll have Lindholm and Manson and Gooley and Fowler, and then we can make the decision on who plays with Goodbranson on that final pairing, whether it's Larson or Maher or Delzato or whoever the Ducks want to throw in there. A couple guys, a couple more roster moves. Simon Benoit got called up, hasn't played yet.
And you were
Interesting.
convinced he was going to play too.
I was, and I think a lot of people were
Yeah.
convinced he was going to play, and I think at that point Josh Maher wasn't. I think he got sent back down before he got called back
Yeah.
up, so the assumption was that Benoit was going to play, but then Maher ended up coming up as well and then took his spot, and Benoit was sitting in the press box. Interesting decision to call up Benoit and not have him play in San Diego when, if he's just going to sit in the press box, but hopefully he gets a game in. I'm sure he likely gets sent back down once Lindholm comes off the IR. Or unless they want to send back down Josh Maher, or they'll just send both of them back down, to be honest. But interesting decision for him not to get in the lineup. And then Maxime Comtois was sent back down, which also was a bit of an interesting decision based off how things have gone for Max Jones. He did finally score. I believe he scored. Was that against the Oilers or against the? Yeah, it was against
It was the Oilers.
The Oilers.
The Oilers.
So
Yeah.
he scored his first of the season, which was actually a pretty nice spin move from behind the net and a top shelf snipe. So nice for him to get on the board. But Comtois was, I think, outside Steele, probably the Ducks' most impressive rookie. 5 points in 12 games, producing at a decent rate for a young player, especially a guy out of all four of them who has the least amount of NHL experience. And he gets sent back down.
Yeah, he had some of that tenacity that you kind of like to see, and at least a drive to get in the puck or to get the puck or get in the play. Kind of make things happen. It's a little easier when you got Getzloff there helping you out as well. But I'm guessing it's just more of like, hey, this so far, we were off to a good start. We really don't want to rock the boat too much, but it seems like we're struggling here, and it's not necessarily a reflection on him. It's more or less, hey, it's not really fair to put this on you to be on one of the top lines and to start producing, and we're not going to put you on a third and fourth line role. Why don't you go down in San Diego, get that going, get some positive vibes, hopefully out of that, be a little bit more dominant, and that'll help you further along in your career. You don't necessarily need to feel like you have to produce now because you're at the NHL and the team's struggling to score goals. So it might be more of a protection move other than they're disappointed in his production.
Yeah, I don't think we have to look into it too much in the sense that this is.
I'm a psychologist and I have to.
I don't think it's because Maxime Comtois was playing bad. I don't think that's why he got sent down. I think they're gonna cycle through a couple of these players, and Max Jones is already, I believe, he got sent down for like one game, one day, and then got called back up. So that could be the same case with Maxime Comtois. Maybe for the next game he gets called right back up again. We don't really know. We'll have to wait and see for that. But it's
they're just gonna have to. They're gonna have to build a monorail between Anaheim and San Diego that just shuttles them like nonstop because these guys are going there, back again.
They've been using it. They've been using it this year. They've been
economical,
sending guys
I think.
up and down, and it's it's been short stays. Josh Maher got sent down for a couple days. He got called back up. We just mentioned Max Jones was sent down for a day. So who knows how long Maxime Comtois was actually down in the AHL before he gets called back up. And I guess that's the luxury, right, of having the AHL team in San Diego now and not out in Norfolk or somewhere else, right? You've got that luxury where you can bring guys up and down pretty easily and send them back down to San Diego whenever you want to get some game time down there. So it's nice to see them at least utilizing that, hopefully, to the advantage of the players, where they can get a little bit more game time instead of sitting in the press box.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I'd travel far enough for hockey games just out of my own wanting to go play. So, I mean, I can understand maybe going back and forth as long as it's, explained that way. Because I think sometimes if you're just sent down, you think, oh, crap, what am I not doing right? And as long as it's explained, no, we just, the more playing time you kind of get your feel for it, come back, maybe there's something different. Hey, it worked with Troy Terry. So
yeah, and I think with Dallas Aikens in there, I'm sure that communication is there, right? Maybe that's not the case if Randy Carlisle is still here. But I think with Dallas Aikens, I'm sure that communication is there. Be like, hey, we're not sending you down because it's a negative. We've got a certain amount of guys in this roster, and we'd rather have you down there playing than sitting in the press box. And, Comtois and Jones have both been scratched at times this year, but I'm sure if there's a goals game going on, you'd rather have him down there playing rather than sitting in the press box. So if they planned already to have Comtois sat out for the next game coming up, that It's better to send him down to San Diego, play a game or two, whatever, how many games the schedule is for San Diego at that time, rather than watching the game, from the press box.
Yep.
All right. Last thing on lineups, we kind of briefly touched on it. Brendan Gooley got recalled. How important is it to the Ducks right now that he can play and plays at a high level? Because he had 4 points, I think, in 3 games, or 4 and 4 down with San Diego when he was down there. So obviously, he needed to be up here, and we saw that in, the struggles the Ducks had in against Edmonton with no Lindholm and no Gooley. And, he looked pretty good in the game against Detroit. How important is he to this roster right now, especially with Hampus Lindholm out?
Yeah, fairly important. I wouldn't say a game changer if he's in or out. I think the biggest asset besides, the game that he can bring is maybe just a little bit of stability, knowing that he was going to be a top 4 at the start of the season, just to at least have your 3 and 4 defensemen there while you're 1 and 2 or try to get back into the lineup kind of helps versus having, all right, we don't have 1, we don't have 2, we got 3, but 4 is out, and now we're looking at 5 and 6 to fill all the rest of the holes. So, I mean, yeah, I know, right? A lot of numbers. But yeah, so I feel like, his game isn't going to change much. He's probably going to get obviously a little bit more responsibility and ice time, but I think they just want him to do what he can do or what they expect him to do and not necessarily do too much more. So right now, like I said, we're plugging holes here. We're just trying to keep the thing afloat long enough for the 1-2 guys to come back and really kind of solidify that defensive side of things. But I mean, it's important when your D-core is decimated the way it is right now. So
yeah. Well, one thing we talked about, and maybe Brendan Gooley factors into this a little bit on the last show, was the Ducks' power play and how bad it was. And of course, this has now become a topic for everybody to talk about, which is fair. The Ducks' power play has been horrible this year, but I think first ones to bring on an article were The Point. And they brought out an analytical view of how the Ducks' power play could be fixed and why it's so bad. And then I believe the same day, Eric Stevens at The Athletic brings out an article on the Ducks' power play. And then I believe there was 2 more that got sprinkled in there at some point. So it was a hot topic over the last few days here. The Ducks' power play has been. But 0 for 5 on the power play against, I believe, the Oilers when this article is written. And 30th in the NHL. They went up against the league worst penalty kill for the Detroit Red Wings. Couldn't solve that either. At the time of this article was written, they were clicking at 8.5%. They don't have the worst power play somehow because the Senators are somehow worse than the Ducks are on the power play at this point. And to add salt to the wound, the Ducks also have the most inefficient unit in the entire league with Fowler, Silfverberg, Raquel, Terry, and Henrique. That unit for the Ducks has played a total of 21-17 of power play time and have scored 0 goals. Nobody is worse than that.
Yeah, and by like a long shot too for is how many minutes they've played without a goal.
Yeah, 5 more minutes than the next worst unit, which surprisingly is Kyle Connor, Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele, Patrick Laine, and Neil Pionk.
Yeah. Who really would have thought us going in as the second worst power play against the worst penalty kill, and they're the Rubik's Cube we couldn't figure out. But we haven't had a good power play since the Walrus was running the show. I think that's not.
Bring him back. The mustache
I've been saying that since he left.
He had something going on there.
Dude, it was the best power play. It was lethal. They brought him in specifically to do that, and then I think at that point he was possibly in line, if Bruce Boudreau didn't work out, to be the next coach, and they decided to go with Randy Carlyle, let the Walrus walk. But yeah, we've had last season with the head coach, but the assistant coach is in charge of the power play. He's still here, and the power play is still ineffectual, and it's to the detriment. I mean, how many goals do you kind of maybe add in there if you sprinkle in 5, maybe 6 more goals? How many more of those are wins, especially against teams or games where Gibson and Miller are only giving up 1 or 2 goals, and we still lose. So, I mean, sprinkle some of those goals in there, and we start looking at a much better record, maybe a little bit more confidence and building on it. They've got a lot of different things that they need to work on. I'm not is my personal opinion. I don't think Terry really belongs on the number one power play, that power play unit. I'd much rather have Getzloff in there to at least help facilitate passes a little bit better. When you have Raquel and Silverberg there that can snipe, I just don't feel that there's anybody there that can really set them up in an appropriate way. And I also feel they don't have any net front presence. They don't have Perry. They don't have Kessler. It's Richie, and he's kind of there if he's not taking penalties or almost doing goalie interference. It's just there's a lot to be desired on all ends of the power play.
Yeah, there's no structure, I think, in the way they set up. And the point in this article, it's a great article if you want to check it out, that they break it down into 3 reasons why the Ducks power play is so bad.
That's it?
And it's honestly, 3 pretty simplistic reasons, and you can see this while watching it. The first one is shot volume in general. And the Ducks just don't get enough shots on net. If you look at their top power play unit, they've kind of split time this year, but the one that we mentioned before, Fowler, Henrique, Raquel, Terry, and Silverberg, they put 16 shots on goal in just over 21 minutes together, which works out they did to about 15 shots per 20 minutes of ice time. That's 25th out of the 28 power play units that have played a minimum of 28 minutes together. So near the bottom in terms of shot generation on that unit. They put into some context here that the top power play unit, which is, of course, the Boston Bruins power play 1, they average just over 24 shots on goal per 20 minutes. So that's 9 more shots per 20 than what the Ducks do. So that's a huge difference right there. And then they go into to say as well for the next topic after this, shot quality comes into play as well. But the Ducks just don't get enough of their shots on net either. They attempt 35 shots on net, and only 16 have reached the goalie. That kind of screams to me perimeter shots, right? Like if you're taking 35 shot attempts and only 16 are reaching the goalie, that means a fair few of them are hitting something on the way to the net or are missing the net. And likely those are from areas where there's enough distance between the shot and the goaltender that something like that can happen. So they're not coming from prime scoring areas, and they're just not shooting the puck enough.
Yeah, and I think it even says in that article too, they have one of the least amount of shots from the inside slot where you score a majority of those goals anyways. They're not even getting passes really there. So I mean, when they're doing a 1-3 and then 1 type of power play, I mean there's kind of 2 guys that are in the middle area, but most of these plays are happening with the other 3 guys who are on the outside. It's either passing around and giving up good looks or good passes. I would just say if it's not working and you got it on the perimeter and those pass lanes just aren't there, shoot it at the goalie's pads. Don't try and snipe it. Don't try and go high. Don't wait for a perfect screen or some other thing. Just throw it in the pads and then crash. Do as best you can, because if you can't get passes through, least you can do is shoot it, make all the penalty killers' heads turn back around to try and locate the puck. If you're just sitting there kind of passing around, they just can kind of keep an eye on you, and it's not really dangerous. Make them turn around, turn their heads around, and you might create some confusion in the offensive zone if you get set up.
Yeah, well, if you've noticed that the Ducks are shooting the puck a lot from the outside in the point, you're not alone, and that's been confounded by their research here. The Ducks, like I said, have 35 shot attempts from that top power play unit. Only 2 of them have come from the inner slot. 3 of them, the third one is a little bit close. It's from just near the bottom of the right circle. So I guess you could say 3 are in prime scoring chances, but 2 only from the inner slot, which is not great. A majority of them come from the center of the ice near the blue line, which is where the usually, if it's Cam Fowler in this instance, is set up and taking those shots, or if they rotate out, a lot of shots are coming from there. And then the other 2 prime areas are from right in the middle of the circle. Neither of those are really prime scoring areas when you look at normal power plays. I guess you could say Ovechkin sets up in the circle, but that's a certain circumstance that works for a player of his caliber. And the Ducks are, yes, they're getting shots from that area, but they're not one-timers and set up with a cross-crease pass. They're usually just shots that end up saying, hey, we got to get a shot in net here to try and generate something, and it usually gets covered up by the goalie, or in this case, hits something. And why is this a problem? Because 43% of all power play goals this year come from the inner slot. When you get 2 chances per 20 minutes from that area, your power play is going to stink. And the Ducks just aren't getting enough quality chances from that area. A lot of their shots are coming from the perimeter, which we saw against the Oilers, we saw against Detroit, and we've really seen for most of the season. The Ducks just don't really attempt passes into that area either, which is what the third point of this article gets to, is their puck movement is generally in the perimeter as well. And they average just over 0.5 passes to the slot per minute, which again, comparing to the Bruins power play, they get about 2 per minute inner slot passes. So not only are the Ducks not getting enough chances from there, they're not even really passing the puck into that area to try and get chances.
Yeah, and like I said, if you're not willing to do that, or you don't see a lane to do that, my theory is then just put it on the goalie's pads, because generally there's going to be a rebound if it's in the pads, and generally if you're shooting it from an angle, that rebound doesn't go to a corner. If you're shooting straight on, it's easy for a goalie to deflect it to a side, which tends to go to the corners and isn't as dangerous. If you're at an angle, if you shoot it far side, that goalie is trying to make that stop, and that puck tends to shoot out far more into the middle or to the opposite side, but away from the goal versus towards the corner. So I'm saying if that's not happening, simplify it, throw it in the pads, and maybe there's a rebound there. If we get a little bit more tenacious inside of there, then you start seeing more of these shots happening from the slot. They don't have to be initial shots. They could be rebound shots, and that's where havoc is created. And so I'd say if you're trying to look for that beautiful 8-pass, roof it type goal, work on this first, get this down, and then all of a sudden they'll start leaving you alone. They start protecting the middle, and then that outside area gets a little bit more open. I think they're doing that so much that they're leaving everything where you should be able to score, off the table at that point.
But the Ducks have quality passers, and obviously Ryan Getzlaf and Troy Terry and Sam Steele. They have guys who can set up the pass to the inner slot. I think that should be a focus for them going forward, is trying to get that. They're not easy passes to make, but when you're not even really attempting more than half an inner pass slot per minute, so you may be getting 1 pass to the inner slot on each power play you get if you go the full 2 minutes. You're not going to get that many chances, prime chances, where, like we mentioned, 43% of all power play goals are scored from. Like, that is an area where the Ducks really aren't trying to get anything from, and they are working primarily from the perimeter, and that can work. Look at the Sharks power play for the last 5 years leading up to this year, when Joe Pavelski was there. They feasted on the high tip and deflection plays, but the problem is the Ducks are getting these perimeter shots. They don't have one deflection shot on net on the power play, and they have just 1 rebound scoring chance that top unit has. So they're shooting from the perimeter, nobody's deflecting the puck, or nobody's in position to deflect the puck, and then nobody's in position to get a rebound chance as well. So at that point, you're shooting from the perimeter, but you're not really putting yourself in a position to capitalize on those chances by having guys in front of the net, like you mentioned, having a net front presence. If you're going to be a perimeter shooting team, you need to have somebody who's there for the tip, somebody who's there for the rebound, and they're not doing that. So they are committing to this perimeter game, but not trying to use it efficiently. And then they're also not even trying to switch it up and try and score from these prime scoring areas. So it's a tough go to look at what the Ducks are trying to do. And I think that kind of goes back to, we said, they don't really have a structure on the power play. It almost looks like they're just trying to go with the flow and kind of wing it on the fly. And I don't know if power play is kind of taking a back seat to just trying to figure out their new system in general. But it seems like they need a new approach. And whether
I feel... No, go ahead. I was just saying, you kind of touched on a little bit, I think they mimic what other teams are doing, but they don't have the same skill set. So when you say a San Jose that's blasting shots from the point, that's because they got a Brent Burns. We don't have a Brent Burns. Cam Fowler's. Yeah. I mean, if you want to say that's a close.
Either,
we don't have someone deflecting in front. That's got the eye-hand coordination. That works for that team specifically. And then you look at your Washingtons or your Bostons. They got threats to score anywhere and everywhere in any way. The Ducks don't have that, even though they have some passing ability. That's really, in my opinion, Ryan Getzlaf. I mean, other than that, and if that's all they have to really kind of worry about, I'm talking about the penalty killers, that's kind of easy to kind of let everyone else, as long as we know this guy can't get that pass through, or they throw it to a point where it's an ineffectual shot from there and no one's going to deflect, At this point, what the Ducks do have, and I think they should do a power play that's a little bit built closer to their strength. They've got guys with quick hands, and darty players, guys can kind of in and out, grab the puck, kind of throw it in the net and do that. And that's, once again, I'm going to build on again, shoot it at the net. Just get a rebound somewhere in there where you can dive in and out, and there's some confusion with the penalty killers. Because if you set up that way and you don't have the skill set for it, you're easier to defend. And even the worst team in the league can stop you from scoring a power play goal.
Yeah, Brett brought up a good point in our chat. He said you have to make them fear the inside if you want to open up passing lanes on the outside. And the Ducks haven't done that. But, if there's one bright spot for the Ducks power play this year, it's that unit that's kind of just been put together in Getzlaf, Steele, Comtois, Ritchie, and Fowler that has actually started to do things right on the power play. They've got 2 goals. Yeah, now Comtois gone for now. But they've got 2 goals in just over 11 minutes of power play time together, which is obviously more efficient than any unit the Ducks have been able to produce so far. And you look at the structure of that power play unit, it kind of sets itself up to be successful as a perimeter shooting power play. You've got Getzlaf on that left side being a facilitator and a threat to shoot. You've got Steele on the far right side as a one-time option as well. And we've seen him make some very good inner slot passes or cross-ice passes so far as well. You've got Cam Fowler at the point, manning the point and getting shots through or facilitating passes that way. And then you've got 2 big bodies for deflections or for rebounds in front of the net in Nick Ritchie and Maxim Comtois. I think if you're going to commit to being a perimeter shooting team on the power play, that's kind of the setup you'd want. It is especially 2 guys like Nick Ritchie and specifically Maxim Comtois that are good and tight and have good hands in tight to convert those rebound chances. I think Max Jones is another guy you could put in that spot as well if you wanted to switch things up on that power play with Maxim Comtois getting down. I think Max Jones kind of slots easily in on that power play. And then maybe for that first unit that struggled so far, it just comes with mixing it up a bit and seeing how things go. And throwing out maybe this unit as the number 1 power play unit with Getzlaf, Steele, Comtois, Jones, Ritchie, and Fowler. Throw that out as the number 1 unit, and then maybe shuffle things up on the second unit and try things out there. I think that should be their go-to right now, especially with that first unit, as they're calling it right now, is not scoring at all. They have not scored 1 power play goal this year, and you've already got a unit that's played half the time as them, and they've scored twice.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that should probably be your first unit from now on if they're converting at a lot better rate than the other one is. We'll see, right? I think there's time to go. I think they have the personnel not to be a top 10 power play in the league, but definitely not to be the second word. They're not on par. You look at the team that, the Ottawa Senators are last. They have no options. They've got maybe Brady Tkachuk, who can be a good option there, and obviously I think Thomas Chabot, among both teams, Ducks or Sens, would be probably the best power play quarterback that either team can produce. But that's it. They don't have too many options from there. The Ducks do have players like Jakob Silfverberg and Ricard Raquel and Ryan Getzlaf who should be able to convert on the power play. I just think the way they're going about it, the structure that they have right now, is just kind of built up to fail, especially when you're just shooting from the perimeter and you're not getting chances in the prime scoring areas.
Yeah, and I think they're looking at what other teams are doing, and they're trying to make it work with this personnel, and I just don't think that it fits it. So I think they got to structure it a little bit closer to what their skill set is and what their advantages are.
All right, let's move on to more of a bright topic, more of a bright spot. Recently put out a Ducks prospect update for the Hockey Raiders. So looking at some of the Ducks prospects who are playing well right now and hopefully going to make the team sometime soon. Some of these guys sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
The typical guys, the guys I think you would expect to be playing well, and Trevor Zegras and Braden Tracy and Benoit Olivier Groux. They had some good weeks. Trevor Zegras had 6 points over the weekend against Providence.
That's it?
Yeah. That's it. He's playing at a pretty unbelievable pace right now. He started not slow, but I guess what you would expect of a freshman in his first year in the NCAA. But then, 6 points against a good team like Providence kind of boosted his goal total right now. And he's dueling with Kings draft pick Alex Turcotte and I guess Fred. They're pretty close buddies. We talked to him when we had him on the show for an interview and how close they are and how much of a rivalry that's going to be for them. Well, they're duking it out for the freshman lead in scoring in the NCAA right now. I think Turcotte's at 1.5 points per game and Zegras is at 1.3. So they're battling it out there. He's got to catch him. He's getting up there. To be fair,
To
I
be
believe
fair,
Turcotte plays, could be wrong, I believe he plays for Wisconsin or he plays for Boston College, one of the two. So they're a little bit better of a team than Boston University. So to be fair for Trevor Zegras, he's
to
doing
be fair.
extremely well playing on the top power play and top line for Boston University so far, which I guess is good to see, right? Because we're kind of hope he comes here at the end of the year, depending on how far Boston University goes in their season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still never, I don't know. I'd rather have the prospects come in at the start of the season. I don't know about them necessarily going from what they were doing in college and all the success and then throwing them in at the end of the season when usually the games are pretty amped up and then, not being able to either be there, being discouraged because it wasn't such a good go. I mean, I guess at some point, baptism by fire, but I would almost like to say, if he's got the goods, then why not just kind of bring him in gradually? That would be my thing. Unless the Ducks are, they need a pump, someone to maybe kind of ignite some goal scoring, but, they'd have to be close. I would say they have to be close to a playoff spot if you really want to try and bring someone in like that.
Well,
I don't know.
I
That's
mean,
my thought.
last year, Quinn Hughes for the Vancouver Canucks, he finished his season early with Michigan, and they brought him in and played him a couple games just to kind of give him a bit of a run. And the Ducks did that with Troy Terry as well.
Yeah.
When they were not really mixing up. I think actually they were going to the playoffs that year. Were they not when Troy Terry came up and then they got swept by the San Jose Sharks? I think that was the same season.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
people were wondering why Terry didn't even get to play one playoff game that season.
He wasn't ready.
yeah. I think we can agree he wasn't ready. But for a prospect, another Ducks prospect who's a little bit closer, I guess, for us seeing maybe on a full-time basis, Benoit Olivier-Groulx is in his final year for Halifax in the QMJHL. He'll be eligible to play for San Diego next year. He has kind of been on a hot streak since getting sent back down to the QMJHL. He's on a 4-game point streak right now. He's got 2 goals and 5 assists. And he scored a pretty sweet between the legs goal that we tweeted out. We quote tweeted from the Mooseheads the other day.
That was a beaut.
Yeah, this is a guy who's kind of had an interesting path. He was drafted in the same year that the Ducks drafted Maxime Comtois. I think about 5 to 10 picks after Comtois got drafted. Was always known as a defensive forward, and he's still doing that. He's one of the league's best in the face-off dot. He's winning over 60% of 471 attempts, so he's doing pretty good. And yes, that's against junior competition, so maybe that doesn't translate, but it still is nice to see him doing that. Defensively, we saw in the rookie faceoff that he is exceptional in his own end, but the offense is coming. I think that is what you hope to see from young players, is that they start to develop offensively. And of course, he's getting older in a league against younger players, so that is kind of commonplace. But he's starting to do things like that. Like that creativity is something we haven't really seen from him flash that often. And it'd be nice to see him come in eventually and be, a solid third line center for the Ducks, a kind of shutdown type defensive center who can win faceoffs and have that creativity and that skill level that he can flash on in every, not a consistent basis, but every now and then.
Yeah, I mean, that would be good, especially when we start looking to the future, because, Getzlaf will be there for a certain amount of time, Henrik, but then you got your Sam Steeles, your Zegras, and then him in there. And, one thing that I was starting to get worried about for a while there was like, all right, well, what happens when Getzlaf's gone? And then, we used to be so dominant down the center with Kessler in there as well. But now it's like everything seems like, uh-oh. But so this is kind of good. Like you said, if he can solidify the third, then you got your top 3, and that's good for a while. So
yeah, they've got options, and at least, again, the top 3 guys that they have outside of outside of the NHL and the AHL right now are probably Zegras, Tracy, and Benoit Olivier-Groulx the way they're playing. So it is nice to see him doing well. 23 points in 16 games, especially, is nothing to sneeze at the way he's having his season so far. The Ducks have a lot of NCAA prospects. They drafted a lot over the recent years, and somehow 3 of them ended up at the University of Minnesota, and Jack Perbix and Blake McLaughlin, who you and me had the privilege of interviewing a couple seasons ago now. They're good buddies, and they both play for the University of Minnesota. And Jackson Lacombe, a recent draft pick for the Ducks, also is playing at the University of Minnesota this year as well. And it was not a great week for, I guess you could say, all of them. But Jack Perbix will think it was a pretty great week because he scored his first collegiate goal, which is nice for him considering he's been playing a third-line role for most of the year for the Gophers. But Blake McLaughlin, I believe he had 1 assist. The assist he had was pretty nice, to be fair to him. But he had 1 assist over, I think, the last 6 games. Jackson Lacombe had 1 assist over the last 6 games. And Perbix actually was the better of the 3 of them, having a goal and an assist. It's a tough run for Minnesota. They didn't really play too great over that stretch. And Blake McLaughlin was a guy who we were hoping, especially the way he started this year, to kind of excel on that. And it's 6 games, right? Like you have stretches like this where things don't go well. And pretty much anybody but Sammy Walker on that team has been struggling. So you're going to have these stretches. So hopefully we can see him rebound this year. But 2 guys from Harvard, again, two Ducks prospects playing on the same team. Jack Bedini, who somehow is still a Ducks prospect. I think he's in his 3rd year with Harvard now. And then Henry Thrun, 3rd round pick from this last draft, have started surprisingly well for Harvard. Harvard's 3-0. They play in a weaker conference in the NCAA because it's a lot of prep schools, so it's not, something like Hockey East where you've got 3 of the best teams in the country playing. But they've started 3-0, outscored their opponents 17-5.
Yeah.
Jack Berdini centering the second line. He's got points in all 3 games, 1 goal and 4 assists. He had a 3-assist night in the season opener. But Henry Thrun, I think, has been one of the most impressive guys. I think when he got drafted, he was labeled as kind of a shutdown guy. We had on the show our draft expert. He came on and said that Henry Thrun was a great pick. It was a steal, but offense was always going to be an issue for this guy. But he's got 2 goals and 2 assists in his first 3 games. So he scored his first collegiate goal and his first collegiate assist in the same game. He's got 2 games where he has a multi-point night. And he's playing second pairing minutes. So he's having a pretty good start to the season, which is nice for the Ducks. They don't have a lot of defensive depth. The only downside, he's a left shot. They don't have a right
As
shot.
always.
Yeah, so
Never going to be.
we got a lot of good lefties coming up, Jackson Lacombe and Henry Thrun, but not a ton of righties. But it is nice to see him start well. Like I said, it is a weaker conference, but to have, there's been some very good, especially defensemen come out of Harvard, especially recently in Adam Fox for the Rangers. So it is nice to see him doing so well points-wise as a freshman in the NCAA. And then one of the last guys I want to touch on is Trevor Janicki, because he started, again, from this last draft for the Ducks had. He started the season pointless in his first 3 games, and he's playing for one of the hottest teams in the country in Notre Dame. Since those first 3 games, he has 4 goals and 3 assists in the last 5 games, including lighting up Blake McLaughlin, Jack Perbix, and Jackson Lacombe in the 2-game series that Notre Dame played against Minnesota. I think he had 5 points in that series alone. And he's playing on the 3rd line too. So he had goals in 4 straight games for Notre Dame. So he's having a pretty good couple weeks here. Hopefully he can continue it because we're looking at guys now that we got from this last draft and Henry Thrun and Trevor Janicki and Trevor Zegras, and Braden Tracy, of course. Like these are 4 of the Ducks' top picks in that draft. And they're all starting to tear it up. They're all starting to play well. And 3 of those, 3 of them are freshmen in the NCAA. And are performing at almost or more than a point per game pace. So it's pretty impressive to have their start so far to the season like that.
I will take it. The one thing that we've always been high on is how well the Ducks draft their prospects, and especially deep in the draft. And they always seem to get the right guys in the beginning, usually for the most part. And then it's, the other ones that tend to always kind of be in the fold. So it's good to hear that they're starting off at least particularly good.
I guess this is one position the Ducks don't have to worry about too much in that with John Gibson the way he's playing. But Lucas Dostal is playing in Liga in the Finnish Elite League this year. Tough league to transition to. He played a few games there last year. But it is one of the probably the 3rd or 4th best league in the world when you look at maybe the KHL and Sweden just being a little bit ahead of it. But it is not an easy league to play in, especially as a goaltender. And despite starting the season a little bit slow, Lucas Dostal, they've just been throwing him in pretty much every game. The last 4 games for Eels, the team he plays with in Finland, they had 2 back-to-backs across those 4 games. He played in all 4. So they're just throwing him in all situations here. He won all 4, and he only allowed 6 goals over that 4-game stretch as well. It's not been an easy adaptation to Finland for Dostal. He's from the Czech Republic, played most of his young career there, and then moving over to a new country is never easily. But he's playing really well right now. Over his last 4 starts, a 1.50 goals against average, a .939 save percentage. His record on the season is 9-3-1 with a .201 goals against average and a .912 save percentage. So, the first couple games of the season kind of knocked his save percentage a bit. So if you take those out, he's I think at basically a .932 save percentage over the last 11 games for him this year. He's a guy who could sneak up for the Ducks in a couple of years and be a pretty good backup for the Ducks once Ryan Miller has finally done his career.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one thing you always want is that next up-and-coming goalie, because you just don't know when an injury is going to play out. And, I mean, every NHL team carries 2 goalies for the most part. I mean, an injury here, lack of playing over there, you're going to start to need that 3rd and 4th guy. So, when goalies go, play A in a new league or B with a new team, sometimes there's that beginning learning curve. So I'm not surprised if someone struggles out of the gate, and it's just consistency. And if he's playing, those 4 games, he's getting a feel for it and hopefully getting a lot more comfortable. And sometimes that's all you need, just a little bit of that confidence, getting a little bit more comfortable, and things just kind of fall into place. So just keep building on it. Got some time to get there, but it's definitely encouraging to see.
Interesting way they utilize their goaltenders in Finland too. I don't think I've ever seen a guy play 4 games, especially in a row, when 2 of them are on back-to-back. So an interesting route they went there. I don't know. They're obviously backup options there, but yeah, he's young and he must be the only capable goaltender they have. And I guess when you can go out and win all 4 of those games, that's not really an issue. And only give up 6, right? He was actually better, I think, in the back-to-backs. He only gave up 2 goals in the games that were the second of the back-to-back. So
yeah, the whole time that the coach is just like ruffling his feathers, like, I knew we were going to win. I know which goalies I'm playing.
How do you feel if you're the backup for that guy? And you didn't get into any of these games. Like, you must feel pretty shitty if you didn't get into any of these games.
We need you to keep that bench warm.
Yeah, that's his job for this season. But last but certainly not least, Braden Tracy. Probably the most impressive. We've talked about some players, the way they're playing, especially Zegras and Thrun and Dostal, the way they're playing. But I think Tracy's had probably the most impressive last couple of weeks. He's played in 6 games over I think the last 2 weeks for Moose Jaw, and over that span he's got 8 goals and 5 assists, 2 hat tricks, one of which he's not his first 4-goal game in the WHL. Just an unbelievable pace for Tracy so far since starting the season. Leads the WHL in points per game at 1.82. And the big thing with Tracy last year is he kind of had an interesting route because he skipped his rookie season in the WHL, decided to play what would have been his sophomore season as his rookie year. Put over 82 points or something like that in 50 games, which ended up getting him drafted in the first round by the Ducks. But he was an interesting choice because he was playing with 2 guys who were 20 in the WHL last year. So a lot of people were thinking, is his production him, or is it based on the fact he's playing with guys who've been around the league for a long time? I think he's kind of dispelled those rumors a bit now that he's basically running a line by himself, playing with a couple guys closer to his age on the top line in Moose Jaw this year and leading the WHL in points per game. Pretty nice look at Braden Tracy so far, considering a lot of Ducks fans were questioning that pick when you looked at who was left on the board in the first round. Zegras was such a home run that I think people kind of forgot that Tracy was a little bit of a swing for the fences at that point. But he's paying dividends so far.
Yeah, once again, we kind of talked about it. It's just, the Ducks scouting and being able to kind of pick that. And, I guess when you get that home run like that, maybe, with Zegras, then maybe you're willing to take that chance that other people weren't quite doing and, hoping for a high upside. So, I'm saying, that big question mark was, is it just because of the players he's playing with? But like you said, he kind of dispelled that. So things are looking pretty bright for most of the prospects we got going, especially in the recent draft.
Got one last thing on prospects, a goalie question from Brett. He said, so do you think with Gibson not being particularly old and Dostal potentially being a starter, is Lucas Dostal somebody they trade if he continues playing at this level and becomes one of the top goalie prospects in the league?
There's always that possibility. I mean, that's Gibby's net for quite a while. Not only just out of his ability, but just from what I've started to hear over the last year or so, his leadership. Even though he can't wear the C or anything like that, he does take on a leadership role. And quite honestly, in most games, he's our best player, even over Ryan Getzlaf or anybody else. I mean, he's someone that. Little serious about it sometimes, but I mean, he inspires the team, and so when you have someone like that and someone that can back it up with their play, it's someone you hold on to for quite a while. So I imagine it's Gibby's net for at least half a decade, if not longer. So when that one's kind of there, and it's kind of like a Brizgalov thing, you're gonna keep holding him back, or he should be a starter somewhere else, then you maybe start to look and see if you can't get some assets for a guy who, although you're glad you got, is never really going to crack that top. So,
yeah, it's tough. It's tough to call it right now. I mean, I think Lucas Dostal is a great prospect, and I think he's one of the top 10 goalie prospects in the league right now, especially with the way he's playing. But
they also got Eck.
Yeah, and they got Eriksson Eck, and you never really know how that's going to translate once they get to the goalie prospects. I think are a little bit more difficult to project when it comes to regular skaters. So he could be playing well now and then make the transition to the NHL and things just don't work out. So of course I hope they do, and it would be nice to have another young goalie in the pipeline that can push John Gibson or be a potential trade piece because of how valuable John Gibson's going to be for this team for a long time. And it's never a bad thing to have assets to trade or valuable assets to trade. And trade from a position of strength. So if Dostal becomes that piece where the Ducks can go up and fill a need, whether it's getting a goal scoring winger, which is something they desperately need at this point, or a right shot defenseman further down the road, that's not a bad thing. And of course it sucks if you watch Dostal go to another team and end up killing it in the NHL at some point. For sure that would suck, but I think right now, like you said, it's impossible to say that this is going to be anybody's net but John Gibson for the next 5 to 10 years. The way he's playing, it's not like he's playing bad. Over the last few years, he's been statistically one of the top 3 goalies in this league.
Yeah, or in history, I think, with the save percentage he was doing over 200 games. Yeah.
All right, well, we got to get into our Patreon segment that we've been skipping for probably the last month. On our Patreon, we have a game show called Bobby's Bargain Bin, where it's just the game changes every time. This time it happens to be a trivia show, but we get one of our Patreon members on each show where they can participate in whatever game we have, and they can win prizes from Bobby's Bargain Bin signing. So I believe the one, and I think we have this one. If not, it's going to be one of the other prizes we have. But we were looking at I think it was a Jared Boll signed puck. I think that's one of the ones we were looking at. There was like a Lucas Spiza signed hockey card and stuff like that. So those are an idea of some of the prizes we've been looking at. The first contestant we have on, we're actually calling him right now, is Derek. He's one of our Patreon members, like I said. And we've got 5 Patreon questions set for Derek or 5 trivia questions set for Derek when he comes in. And basically,
hey, what's going on, Eddie?
Hey, Derek, what's going on? All right, are you ready? Are you ready for the trivia questions here?
I'm ready.
Now, if like I said, this is part of our Bobby's Bargain Bin trivia thing for Patreon, so you basically can't lose. Like the Bobby's Bargain Bin prize, that's a given. You'll win that. What you're playing for is trying to get as many questions right as you can, because at the end of the year we're gonna have a grand prize drawing. For something that's actually valuable, something that's better than a Jared Boll signed puck.
But you actually could lose, Derek. You could lose our respect because these are pretty easy.
All right, well, yeah, let's do this. I'm pretty sure I'll get the majority of them.
First question. What junior team did Ryan Getzlaf play for?
The Calgary Hitmen.
Nice. We should have
that's one of the easy ones. I don't have any sound effects. This is low budget. That one was one of the easier ones. Second question. How many goals did Teemu Selanne score in his rookie season?
I think it was 76.
Ding, ding, ding.
Look at that. Dead on. I would not have got that one, so props to you for this one.
Yeah.
Questions get a bit harder here. This is a personal favorite question of mine. What year did Randy Carlyle win the Norris Trophy?
Norris Trophy. Jesus. 70,
You sound surprised that Randy Carlyle
won.
won. 77? It's close, but 1980-81. Randy Carlyle was the Norris Trophy. I'm sure.
That's a hard one.
I'm sure if you talked to Randy Carlyle once, I'm sure that would be the first thing that would come up is what year he won the Norris Trophy. Next question we have, another Ducks coach question. This is where they start getting a bit harder. What team was Dallas Eakins drafted by?
Oh, Toronto, I believe, right?
No, he coached for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but he was drafted by the Washington Capitals.
Oh, that's a hard one, yeah.
I think that was the hardest one we had. Last question here. You're two for 4 right now. So let's finish on a good note. What AHL team did the Anaheim Mighty Ducks and the Detroit Red Wings share?
Keyword is Mighty Ducks. So this is going back.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you know what? That's a really hard one. I don't know that one.
Think of Ohio. Cities in Ohio.
Cleveland Mighty Ducks?
Close.
No.
The Cincinnati Mighty Ducks. But,
Cincinnati Mighty Ducks.
We'll take
Cincinnati.
it. You are now a proud owner of a Bobby's Bargain Bin. Whatever we end up getting, if it's the Jared Bullside puck or Luca, you can tell this is full budget here. Whatever we end up getting, it's
we reach into the bargain bin and pull out a grand prize for that.
Pat
Bob
is
Murray
way
would be
more
proud.
organized than us, so he was looking at stuff like this earlier. But you've either won a Jared Bull signed puck, a Lucas Spiza signed hockey card, a James Wisniewski signed something, whatever. We'll find a guy. You've won that, and because you're so great and a Patreon supporter, you've been entered into the grand prize at the end of the season to win something that's a lot better than a Jared Bull signed puck or a Lucas Spiza signed hockey card.
Great. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
All right, no problem, Derek. Take care.
Thank you for your support.
Appreciate it, Eddie. Thank you. Have a good night.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's Bobby's Bargain Bin at a very low budget level.
Went about as well as I thought it would.
Yeah, exactly. That was put together in 10 minutes, so it went as good as we thought it would. But we had to squeeze one in because we've been promising this for a while. Brett will be on for Bobby's Bargain Bin for Sunday, and hopefully we'll have a bigger – or Saturday or Sunday, whenever we're doing the next show. I think it's Sunday because there's no game. But anyway, Brett is on for Saturday or Sunday for Bobby's Bargain Bin, and it will be something similar. Probably not a trivia game, something different. And we'll actually have the prizes nailed down for that because Pat will be there, and he'll be more prepared than we are for that. So let's
and Pat couldn't be here because of happy anniversary for him and his wife Michelle. So
especially, Pat.
That's why he's not
Pat
here.
Was trying to say he's like I'm 95% sure I can't come. I'm like, Pat, just be 100% sure you can't come.
It was he brought it up like a week ago, and I'm like, okay, he's not showing up. I'm going to see what I can do. I'll shut up.
Just enjoy,
whatever, dude.
Enjoy you. And he was still doing work for the show today. He was still looking up prizes. He still posted the picture of our fan questions in our doc, I think, earlier before the show. So kudos to Pat for putting in work despite his wedding anniversary. But there was no way we were letting him on this show tonight and taking time out from him and Michelle's wedding anniversary. So. But Pat will hopefully be back for Saturday or Sunday, and it'll be the three of us. So, all right, let's move on to fan questions. We have a few on Twitter and a few on Facebook. Alex McKay just went nuts and asked 3 questions on Twitter, so I guess we'll get to all 3 of those.
Overachiever.
First question he said is, what is the Ducks' best D lineup without Manson and Lindholm? What they have now?
That's
Gooley Fowler. As much as I hate it, Larson and Holzer likely stay together because they always stay together. And then I guess Mahura and Goodbranson, and Delzato is the 7. Like that's probably the best one that they have.
Yeah, and now is he asking what's the top 2 defensemen that you would use instead of Lindholm and?
I think he just means like what is their best
lineup.
Lineup, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'd agree with that because that's literally all we have. I mean, other than
Yeah,
that,
it's
we're not
those
really
guys
going to
in
be.
Del Sado. There's 7 guys that we can pick
There's
from.
7 guys we got to choose
And
from.
I guess
So
Simon Benoit's there, but we haven't seen him play, so I
yeah, so I
can't put
couldn't
him in
tell
there
you.
yet. Yeah, so
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
and that's the only way you can do it because Larson and Holtz have been together for the most of the season, and Gooley and Fowler are going to be put together. So I guess Josh Maher is the guy who gets to be anchored by Eric Goodbranson. Sorry, Josh, but that's the way things are going to work out. Part of that question you said is what about with Lindholm, and then what about if you had Lindholm and Manson? I think if you have Lindholm and Manson, it's pretty easy because you've got Lindholm, Manson, Gooley, Fowler, and then it comes down to that third pairing where I think it's Goodbranson and one of Delzato, Larson, or Mahura, and probably Mahura gets sent back down, so it's Larson or Delzato.
Yeah.
So
Now they can't send. Can they? They can't send Larson down without passing through waivers.
I don't know. I think we brought this up before, and I was wondering if he was waiver exempt, and then I just never checked if he was waiver exempt.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, flip a coin in my opinion between Larson and Mahura. I mean, they're both trying to make the lineup. They both got good games and bad games under their belt. So but yeah,
Larson,
I think that
Larson is waiver exempt, so he can be sent down.
I don't know. I mean, you're splitting hairs here at the very lowest level, but I probably have Gudbranson and then Mahura as that 5-6. And then just depending on if they have a bad game, you can throw in Holzer, but once again.
Or throw in Delzato, right? So
yeah, and either way, it's not what you want to have to be doing, but looks like that's what we have to do.
So Alex's next question, he prefaces this by saying it's a potentially deep-end question. He says, are the Samuelis owners that care about winning, or do they just seem content to not lose money? He said, attached to that, how long is Murray's leash? Would there ever be a point where he's on the hot seat? For the first part, are the Samuelis owners that care about winning, or do they just seem content to not lose
money? No, I don't think that they're content with losing. I mean, I know they want to win. They got a taste of that right at the beginning when they got there. They do so much in the community as well as improvements in the arena. I mean, they are spending money on things that don't necessarily mean that they're going to win. I mean, they're doing it for the fan experience, and if you're trying to improve the fan experience, the best way to do that is through wins. And I know that they're trying to do that. And they've opened up the coin purse, a little bit for Bob Murray in the past. Try to reel it in maybe a little bit right now, but I don't question their integrity or their want to win versus them just worried about the bottom line, because they wouldn't do what they've been doing if they were just worried about how much profit they're going to squeeze out of it.
They also don't have really any control over the hockey decisions that are made, and I think the Ducks have been a cap team for the last 4 or 5 seasons where they've been spending close to the cap. This year it just turns out they haven't. I think also with the decision to buy out Corey Perry, that directly affects the pocketbooks for the Samuelis, having to pay out that money for a player who's not there. So that also, I think, is a decision where that's them trying to be a winning team sooner rather than later. And I think that is a decision we didn't expect them to make, where we didn't expect them to buy out Corey Perry and have to front that money to a player who wasn't going to be a part of the team, and they ended up doing that. So I think they are owners that care about winning, but they only have so much influence on the winning that actually takes place.
Yeah, I think there's 2 different types of owners. There's those that are ultra involved and where that can maybe show like they're passionate. Sometimes they're getting too involved. They make bad decisions because of how involved or how smart they think they are. And there's other ones that are like, listen, we like this team, we want it to be good, but we aren't in hockey ops. We don't necessarily understand the ins and outs of contracts, players, prospects, scouting. We're not in that. We trust the people who are in charge to do that, and we review with them. And year in and year out, everyone's under review afterwards, even Bob Murray.
Yeah, and the second part of his question was, is how long is Murray's leash? Will there ever be a point he's on the hot seat? I don't think so, because I believe his contract's up after was it after the Seattle expansion draft? So 2 more years. Yeah. So it's basically he gets the Seattle expansion draft as a send off, and then that's it for him unless they re-sign him. I honestly think that's probably it for him at that point. I think they try and move in a different direction. I could be wrong, and they could re-sign him. Who knows?
It all depends.
But yeah. I thought right when that contract was signed and the timing of it and it being right until the expansion draft, it was almost like, hey, this is it. You've got a chance to turn this team around in the next couple of years, and then you get that last big decision at the expansion draft with the roster you currently have. Getzlaf's contract comes off the books, Perry's contract's off the books, Kessler's contract is off the books in the season after that. So all the big contract decisions he made, I guess barring Fowler and Silfverberg and Henrique anymore, he makes into that decision. All those big old contracts are gone, and it really primes and obviously the expansion draft decisions made there. It really set yourself up for a new GM at that point if you want to go in that direction. Now they might re-sign him, and I think that's a very possible decision they take. But the length of his contract right now and when it ends, it kind of perfectly aligns for you if you want to go out and get a new GM. I don't think he's on the hot seat. I don't think he ever will be, but I think 2 years could be it for him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this team's kind of in that transition period, so even if they're not exactly, knocking down the doors of competing for the Stanley Cup, if they're competitive and they look decent enough and they're moving forward, they're not moving backwards. Last year was the low mark. Everything has to be an improvement. The only time is if we start going backwards, that's where maybe they cut his contract sooner. But once again, I don't think they're very impulsive to go ahead and do that. I mean, if you were really impulsive and thought he was doing a crappy job, it was him not firing Carlisle and waiting that damn long to do that. So he's had some questionable moves, from from head coaching to assistant coaches. Once again, I'm not a big fan of McLean leaving.
But decisions, right?
Contract decisions, but he doesn't overspend. He works within the budget. He's got a good idea. He's not a bad GM. It's just not every decision is going to work out great. And he knows the deficiencies in the team. He's trying to solve those problems where he can with what he's got. He's probably owner-friendly GM, meaning that, he's not going to ask you to pay out a whole bunch of guys for bad contracts, and he's trying to make it work and build up, through the draft and that sort of deal. And you can't fault him on that either. They've been doing great there. So I don't think he's in the hot seat. I think, he gets those other 2 years, and just depending on his success over the next 2 years, that'll determine whether or not they let him walk, or if they think they can get someone better or can put the team in a better position to win.
Last question we had was from John T. Lamb on Instagram. He said, "Time to panic."
Oh, fellow Lamb.
Yeah, LAM. Yeah. Sorry, close. Not 100%.
Almost.
He said, "Time to panic. If so, who should we trade and for what?" So, is it time to panic for the Ducks?
It depends what your expectation is. If your expectation was, if I'm going to the Stanley Cup and we got to compete right now for the Stanley Cup, then I'd be in panic mode. But this is a team that was not projected to even make the playoffs. Most analysts didn't think they'd be anywhere close. So to have the start they have, that's good. Because they're younger players, a new coach, a new style, and kind of a new mentality, there's going to be those struggles and those successes. You're going to roll with them, and they're going to be a lot like what we've seen, where we have good streaks, bad streaks, and kind of things in between. Hopefully they kind of start figuring it out. Things get a little bit more consistent, but it's not panic button. It's just they're where I kind of thought they would be at this point. So.
Yeah. I think if you had Tampa Bay Lightning expectations for them, you thought they were going to win,
they're in panic mode right now.
So, you're in panic mode. But 9-8-2 right now, I believe, is their record. That's kind of where I expected them to be around this year. Be a team that's going to, maybe scrape into a playoff spot. I don't think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league, and I think they've shown that they're not going to be, nearly as close to where they were last year. They're likely an 85 to 90 point team this year, which is, I think, what they're on pace for anyway. So. No, it's not time to panic, and I think people were optimistic and excited for this year for good reason. A new coach, young players, but that also comes with learning curves and struggles, and we've started to see that this year. So that's going to happen. I think at some point they have a stretch where they win 3 or 4 games in a row, and then there's going to be struggles like this. It's just going to be kind of a roller coaster of a season in that sense. So no, I'm not super. super panic mode yet. And in terms of who should they trade and what should they trade for right now, I think it's a little bit too early. I don't think the Ducks really need to make any moves. Maybe they go out and get a right shot defenseman, and if the right hockey move comes up, then sure, but I don't think you're going to sell the farm to go out and get Rasmus Ristolainen or somebody of that quality right now. I don't think the Ducks are really in a position where they have to do that. But like I said, if the right move comes up, then I think Bob Murray would make it.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on to we don't have a ton of time, but let's move on to the Shootout, brought to you by CoolHockey. This is where we discuss some of the top NHL topics in the league. Quick disclaimer, the Don Cherry is the biggest news story in the NHL right now. We are going to cover that, but we're covering that on our rant show on Patreon because it's a perfect topic for the rant show. It's just written perfectly for that. So that's a little bit of tease for that show. I think if you're a Patreon member, then you'll be. I think it's $5 Patreon, $5 and $10 Patreon members get access to the rant show. So that's going to be a topic on there. And then we're also going to discuss Jeremy Roenick had this great story about Michael Jordan and a gambling and golf story that he had with Michael Jordan. That's going to be, I think, for either our rant show or for probably our Pucks and Brews show, which is coming in later in the month. So those two things we're covering later. But first topic we have for today's show is Ilya Kovalchuk. Mm-hmm. The LA Kings are not playing him. He's allowed to come to practice, but they don't want to play him. And Kovalchuk made no comment today, and it looks like they're trying to mutually get rid of his contract, whatever that looks like. He's making $6.3 million for the next couple of years, and I wish Pat was on this show because Pat said he was going to score 30 goals, and I told him he was going to be a bum, and now we're here. And now Kovalchuk is a bum, and the LA Kings are looking to get rid of his contract.
Yeah, no, I was not on the same boat. As Pat was. I mean, if you wanted to be like overly optimistic, maybe, but you got to look at the facts. You're talking about a player who is mid-30s, coming in at 6. I mean, that the price and term. I mean, 3 years isn't crazy, but it is for someone that old and for someone who hasn't played a league. I think he was out for like 4 or 5 years. Yeah. And no movement clause, which also makes it very difficult to try and trade him or do anything like that. And you were just hoping he could come in and play. But the one thing that was so evident to me when they signed him, or anyone that wanted to sign him, it's like he has missed only 4 or 5 years. And sometimes players come back and they're good. I mean, Yager did it, and that's fine. But the NHL has changed so much in those 4 to 5 years before he came back. He had skill and he had size, but now size is kind of out of it. Skill's there, but the skill's even higher than what he's used to, and the speed is a whole nother factor. So does he have talent? Absolutely. Does he have $6 million worth of talent and a no move clause? Absolutely not. And maybe your best year was going to be that first one, and then after that, it's all downhill. So the Kings are in quite a spot. I made the suggestion online that if the Kings can just load him up with some prescription drugs and send him to the Canadian border, it would just work out. Textbook Kings salary cap avoidance.
He got really old really fast, and not just his age, but the way he looks right now. Like, he's got white hair. He's looking like Alex Ovechkin. But like, so he's judgy. 40 right now. Kovalchuk is. But you know what? I feel like this is more than you're playing bad, we don't want you, because he's actually not playing that bad. Obviously worse than what his contract states, but he's got 9 points in 17 games, which is more than a lot of Kings players have. It's more than Jeff Carter has in the same amount of games played. Jeff Carter has 7 points in 18 games. The only guys who have more, Dustin Brown has 10, Drew Doughty has 10. And Anze Kopitar has 18. I feel bad for Anze Kopitar playing on not too much, but being on such a bad team. But he's got more points than Tyler Toffoli, more points than Sean Walker, and like I said, Amadio and Iafallo. Like, he's the 4th highest scorer on this team, right? Yeah. But it has to be things, I think, going on behind the scenes with what I wouldn't be surprised with Ilya Kovalchuk if there was. And I think they're just fed up with it. And again, the contract comes into play there, making $6.3 million.
Yeah, and at what point is he just holding up a roster spot? And at what point are you going to have a $6 million man on the 4th line? It's kind of the same thing we were running into with Corey Perry. It's like, like you and all, and you do put up some points, you're kind of in there, but really at this point, your game doesn't justify the contract, and we're kind of starting ready to move in a new direction. But apparently, he's horrible defensively. His responsibility on defense. He's just lackluster on that side, and you can be that if you're the Kovalchuk of old, where you can snipe a whole bunch of goals. Yeah. But he's really not doing it at that level, and you got guys like Kopitar who are defensively responsible, in the elite level, and still producing more offensively. So it's hard to justify that $6 million there. Yeah, maybe he's getting more points than Carter, but quite honestly, Carter's also coming back from injuries. He's up there in age as well. You can expect a decline. So I think, at least with Carter, there's some sort of responsibility on defense. I think that's their major gripe. And it's not just Todd McClellan. Desjardins didn't work well with him either. Sat him down the fourth line, healthy scratch. So this is over multiple coaches and over multiple seasons. So it was doomed. I never saw it really working out.
I love to have Josh Cooper on the show again just to talk about this, because I feel like this is a bit of a stealth tank by the LA Kings in the sense like Anze Kopitar is going to be Anze Kopitar, and you can't get rid of him. You can't get rid of Drew Doughty. But you can make up something up like this up and not play Kovalchuk and just get rid of him. And Tyler Toffoli's already been publicly placed on the trade block and likely to be moved by the deadline. Jeff Carter has been rumored for the last couple seasons to try and be moved. And from there you look at if Carter goes and Toffoli goes and Kovalchuk goes, that's 3 of your top 6 guys on offense. Obviously you can't move Kopitar, can't move Doughty, and you're likely not going to move Dustin Brown. But if you remove 3 of those 6, like that increases your chances to go out and get a guy like this year, like Alexis Lafreniere or Quentin Byfield. And right now the LA Kings are last in the Western Conference at 6-11-1. Their 13 points they're actually last in the entire league right now. Their 16 points are league worst, or 13 points are league worst, worse than the New Jersey Devils, worse than the Ottawa Senators, worse than the Detroit Red Wings, and directly tied with the Minnesota Wild. So I don't want to say it is because I don't know, but when you add in the fact that they just don't want to play Kovalchuk, with the fact that Toffoli's on the trade block and Jeff Carter already has been, it kind of looks like a stealth tank a little bit. Like they want this 1 or 2 overall pick in what's supposed to be a very, very good draft.
Yeah. Well,
And let's hope they don't get it, because last year they were supposed to get Capo Caco, and I loved the fact that they fell out to number 4. They still got Alex Turcotte, which he's still a great player, but it's not what we expected Jack Hughes and Capo Caco to be eventually. So all good news there. Next topic we have, this is a short one, but I just loved it. If you haven't seen the video on the Carolina Hurricanes broadcast recently, it's a Fox Sports broadcast, so it's a similar setup to what the Ducks have. So in the Ducks broadcast where there's like a glass window behind
partition,
them, and you can see some of the fans behind it. So the Hurricanes have the same thing. And there was one Hurricanes fan holding an ice cream cone talking to another one. And another guy sneaks up behind him, steals his ice cream, takes a bite of it, and then tries to put it back. He tries to put it back. The guy notices it's gone, doesn't notice the guy has his ice cream. The guy
looks the wrong way.
Yeah, looks the wrong way. The guy who took it just says, "All right, I'm out of here. I'm going to take the ice cream. I'm going to take it with him." Leaves, and the guy still doesn't notice. And the girl beside him notices the guy leaving with the ice cream. But this guy, I thought he noticed him, but then he starts looking around everywhere else. Like he's like, "What happened to my ice cream?" So he had no idea what was going on. I loved that video. It was hilarious. It blew up. I just would have loved if he got the ice cream back. I think that would.
Yeah, I know. Kind of. It's just like just take one little bite, put it back in, and see if he notices the bite or not. But oh man, but yeah, no, that guy's my personal hero. He takes it, disappears, takes his bite, comes back, tries to put it back. He's like, "Oh crap, I'm in trouble." And then it was just like it was perfect timing to put his shoulder in the way and hide the cone right as the guy starts to turn around his way, and then he just I'm on my way over here. I gotta think ice cream cone that big has got to be heavy. And although this dude was looking at this other dude's phone and seeing whatever, you got to feel that weight all of a sudden just not in your hand.
And that's got to be like a $7 ice cream cone at an arena too.
Oh my god, even more. Oh, geez.
You would have noticed
that
it
was
was
funny.
a beer though. If it was a beer, you would have noticed it. But
yeah, well, I'm thinking a lot of beers maybe kind of threw off his whole weight equilibrium.
Ice
or
cream
whatever.
at a hockey game though.
especially at the end of the game.
Yeah.
The game was over at that point. I think, I don't know, maybe it was in between.
It was like a
periods.
waffle cone, giant ice cream cone. Like when are you? I don't think I've ever been at a hockey game and thought, yeah, you know, I could go for an ice cream cone right now.
A child would, but this is a grown ass man. That's weird.
And I don't think I would have the balls to be that guy and take it from this guy either.
Like I said, I think alcohol had a lot to do with everything happening there.
Did the Canes win that game? That might be.
I think they did. I think they were playing Vancouver and they beat them, I think.
But I'm going to get a couple questions in the chat before we finish off our NHL talk here. Almighty Peppa just joined the show. She missed a little bit of it earlier, but she had a couple questions right after we had our question period. She said, do you think a lot of the Ducks' struggles are based on their defense without their top two defensemen?
It's significant. That and their power play, I would say, is probably their biggest thing. And depth scoring a little bit. I mean, Kasha, although getting the chances, hasn't quite buried it. Max Jones, same type of deal. You know, Raquel's doing great. Silverberg, you know, Getzlaf's doing a little bit more than we'd expect. But, you know, Troy Terry's not really lighting it up either. And we're getting close to the 20-game mark here. And we're kind of struggling to find those necessary goals. But I think if the power play clicks a little bit, that definitely helps us in getting some of those wins. And you can't say enough about losing 3 or top 4 defensemen for a significant amount of time. Yeah. So it's significant. There's a lot of factors going into it, but that's a young team struggling, and injuries are playing a part of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors, but I think that's playing a big part of it, especially when you don't have Lindholm and Manson. You look at the depth after that being, you know, Del Sotto and Larson, and no discredit to Mahura the way he's playing, but that's a tough task defensively to fill when you lose Josh Manson.
It's a tough ask.
And Hampus Lindholm. Chris just said Honda Center has good ice cream. So Chris is the type. Chris is the type of guy who gets ice cream at hockey games. So
the only kind, I don't know. It's been so long since I've had ice cream at any sporting events. I don't know if this is more like at the Angel game, but they have the ones that like you have like the wooden spoons, and then you kind of get it, but it's like ice cream, and then it's also like caramel. I like those ones.
See, that's baseball games are acceptable because it's outdoors and it's hot.
Hot usually in summer, yeah.
But you're inside a hockey arena that's generally cold, and I guess there maybe it's different because you guys like it's warm outside, so maybe like and I guess Carolina maybe is pretty warm, so you're getting ice cream to go outside. It's warm. I'm used to going into a hockey arena here and it's freezing, so why would I want an ice cream cone to go outside in the snow? So maybe that's a bit biased on my part.
Well, is it any worse than that one Canadian fan or Toronto fan chick who was there with her boyfriend, literally just eating mayo straight out of a freaking jar like that big?
I had to be.
Is that a Canadian thing?
I don't know, man. That had to be a bit. There's no way that was real. They brought a giant jar of mayonnaise and were just eating mayonnaise, and they were dipping something in it. He was dipping something in it.
He was dipping, and then like she's just sitting there, just like spoonful, and it's like no. There was no time in between.
Thing.
I don't know, but yeah, I think it was Canadian because I thought, well, maybe it's a French Canadian thing. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. I wouldn't be surprised. Well, yeah, okay. Here's the last topic we had. There was a players poll. We originally had this set up for last show, but we missed it because we ran out of time. But it was an NHL player poll done by ESPN where they asked 9 different questions. I don't think you haven't seen this, right?
Parts of it. I think I read like the beginning 1 or 2.
Okay, I want to see if you can get these answers. So the players, I don't know which players, but they were polled on a varying amount of questions that went across from like what is the worst locker room you're visiting to is there a drug problem in the NHL. So they kind of went the full spectrum on their questions here.
Yes. Yeah.
But we'll run through these real quick. I want to see if you can get the answer. So the first one was, which team has the worst visiting locker room? Now, this is just completely random because none of us will know which team has a shit visiting locker room. But
yeah,
what team would you think has the worst visiting locker room?
Just the physical locker room?
Yeah, like just the visit.
I would just think it's like one of those.
Think it'd be
whatever
like one of the
city
older
arenas. Sucks.
I think it would just be one of the older arenas, right? Because the newer arenas would generally, like, I'm sure Edmonton probably has a nice one because it's a new arena. So, like,
I don't know. I don't know. Say Philly.
Philly is not on this. So the worst one by almost a wide margin, 42%, is Washington. And then Boston's at 34%, and then the next one is Carolina at 18%. So, like, Boston, I think TD Garden's pretty old, so that kind of makes sense. I'm not sure how old Verizon Center is, but
I don't
maybe
think it's that
Washington
bad.
just
That old,
made
I mean.
their visiting room just horrible.
Purpose.
So some of the players said Washington's showers are so bad they're like a prison shower. There's a pole in the middle that just spews that just comes out of one pole. And then one of the players said, Boston is brutal. You're right there next to the rink. It's cold. You're not comfortable. If you feel comfortable, you're going to play well. So that's probably why they do it. It's a competitive advantage for them. So I think that he's just mad that Boston's cold, but apparently Washington's showers are just so bad that all the players hate it.
Yeah.
Fair enough. On the same trend, which team has the best visiting locker room? I actually didn't see this one, and I got the first answer, just guessing.
The best. I would say probably a newer place. Would Vegas be there?
Vegas is there, yeah, they're second. And this went to my kind of trend on newer arenas probably have better visiting locker rooms, because you look at these three teams, I think they have the three newest arenas in the league. Edmonton's number 1 at 40%. They have the second newest arena in the league at Rogers Place. Vegas is number 2 at 28%. They have one of the newer arenas in T-Mobile Arena, and then the newest arena in the league is Little Caesars at the Detroit Red Wings. They were number 3. Oh. And then Minnesota was there with number 12. I don't know how. I think they have an older arena, but people just liked it. But, of course, everybody's saying good showers, big locker rooms. Someone said Edmonton's like a penthouse. There's so much space. So
nice.
Maybe that's why Edmonton's been so bad for so long. They're just making the other team feel
being too nice.
Yeah. Number 3, would you play for Seattle in year 1? Players got a yes or no option.
Oh.
How many do you think? Do you think the majority was yes or no? And then what percentage?
I think it's a significant amount would probably say yes, just because of how well Vegas did. But Vegas is completely different from Seattle, so I would say majority would probably say no, not wanting to play in an overly cloudy city like Seattle. So.
That's what I would have thought. It's a bit closer. It's 60-40, but for yes, 60% of the players said they would.
Wow.
And most of it's based off.
I mean, you'll play wherever you're going to get paid, so I guess it doesn't matter. But
yeah, most of it's based off of the success from Vegas, how they make far. So one player said the success of Vegas has definitely opened guys' minds up to it a little bit more. One guy said the travel would probably suck, but other than that, it would be sick. Another guy said, I think it'd be a lot of fun. It's a great city. Seems like they're putting a lot of money into the rink, and it worked out last time with Vegas. So a lot of the sentiment was it was Vegas. A couple guys said they'd never played there, but they know guys who played junior there, and it was great. And then one guy said he wants to play on the East Coast. So I kind of get that, but Seattle it does not seem like a great city maybe to live in, but it is a sports city with the Seahawks and with the Sounders. So, and obviously basketball and hockey have been there at times too, and obviously the Mariners and baseball. So I could see that. It would be a nice city to play in, especially if the fans take to it, right?
Hey, I'll play there if they pay me.
Yeah. Starting goaltender. There you go. Just put your name in on the expansion draft.
Right.
Number 4, the question was, would you feel comfortable appearing in a national ad campaign for, say, Nike or Gatorade, or do you feel that would be too much of a distraction to your team?
I don't say it would be a distraction to the team. I would. I mean, if you're going to get that, you're going to get more money because that's kind of a sponsorship deal. So why turn it down? And then, I think now a lot of, the players coming in, they're a lot younger and a lot more on social media. And so they're kind of more open to doing things and being out there versus that, I guess, that old school mentality where it's, you put team first and, you don't make us look bad and all that stuff. I think it's getting more and more outdated. So I would say most people would probably be on board with it.
Yep, 64% said they would. 36% said no. And one of the quotes they had from one of the guys who said no is it's like he just doesn't want to put himself out there like that. Not so much a team thing, but that's just not his thing. One guy said it'd be fun for sure, but if my face was on TV all the time, he'd get chirped by the guys. A couple of guys said that more NHL players, especially the superstars, should do it because put them out there, maybe not wear suits all the time, switch it up. He said kind of in the same style of the NBA where they kind of show more of their personality. And one guy said, I'd do it, but I wouldn't do the body issue, though. That's too much. Ryan Kessler would disagree, but I can see it's just not for every guy, so I can understand. I'm sure some of the old school guys were most of the guys that said 36%. Here's where the questions flip to a completely different territory. It goes to from about should players put themselves out there and would you play for Seattle to the NHL doesn't punish for recreational drugs. Is that good or bad? And there's three answers the players could have. You're good, bad, or indifferent. What do you think the majority percentage of this was for?
Recreational. I don't know, because that's really dependent a little bit on where you grew up and I guess your attitude about it moving forward. Once again, I think it's a little bit of a younger league, and it's probably not as frowned upon, or I guess more accepted.
They gave the players an easy out here, though.
Yeah,
by having that third option, indifferent. Yeah. That was the easy out.
Yeah. So I think if you add that up and it's not a big deal, I think then you have a majority right there, probably.
Yeah. So the question was, the NHL doesn't punish for recreational drugs. Is that good or bad? 62% said indifferent because they were given that easy out. 24% said it's a good thing that the NHL doesn't punish for recreational drugs, and 14% said it's bad. So I think the players were not 100% sure what they meant by recreational drugs, because one said, I think it's both. If you're talking about marijuana and cocaine, one of those drugs is probably beneficial. The other one is not, so maybe the policy needs to be redefined. One player said if it's not performance enhancing, it doesn't give you an edge, then whatever.
Yeah, and then the other thing, too, is not every state is allowing it as recreational. So depending on where these players are playing from, they may not even view either one of those as recreational.
Yeah, right. And again, like some of the players are saying, like there's a big, kind of drop off between marijuana and cocaine, and what's
a lot harder,
and what's not. So, one player said, I think it's good. In other sports, you see guys getting suspended for weed. It's their body. I'd rather have that than opioids, right? And one player said, I don't think it's a problem. We're all professional athletes. We take care of our bodies and know what to do. I'm sure if they asked Evgeny Kuznetsov, he would have probably been part of that good category, even though he got
once he came off of the ceiling, Kuzi, get down here. Get down here. We need to talk to you.
And this next question is completely related to that, and focuses more on the cocaine use in the NHL, which has been, I guess, the big topic when it comes to drug use in the NHL, especially with obviously starting with Kuznetsov's suspension for 3 games at the beginning of the year. Said, given the league's approach to recreational drug use, does the NHL have a cocaine problem? Before we get into the answers, imagine being asked these questions. You get started off with questions like, what's the worst locker room to be in? What's the best locker room? Do you want to play in Seattle? Does the NHL have a cocaine problem?
Answer the question.
It's a bit of a
do you have drugs right now?
Yeah, that's question number 7. But what do you think their answers were? So again, they were given an easy out here, but the answers were yes, no, or I don't know.
I think they'd either say I don't know or no, just because if they do know it's going on, they're not going to say that it's going on, because then it's probably their teammates that they, So I would think an easy out is I don't know, I've never seen it, whatever.
So some of these answers you can kind of look at and say, like, not that these guys know something's going on, but they're a bit scripted answers. So yes, 10% said yes, that it does have a cocaine problem. 58% said no. 32% said I don't know. So these are some of the answers they had listed here from the players. One guy said, has anyone said yes to this question? I really don't think there is one, so I'd be shocked if someone said yes. Another player said, I've never seen it. I don't know if it's just my team, but I've never seen it. Again, that seems like a scripted answer there. One player said, you hear stories of it and they're kind of shocking. Maybe in the summer guys get into it, and maybe 10, 20 years ago you would see it more often. But I've never really been on a team where guys are doing it all the time. I've never actually seen any guys do it during the season or anything like that. One guy said, I don't think there's a problem compared to the problem outside the NHL. It's probably the same. One guy said, honestly, I've been lucky. I've never been on teams where it is. I've heard of some teams, though, where they're going to go to party and they have a day off the next day and they will have some. So that's a bit interesting, where he says, I've never been a part of it, but I've heard of these other guys that, they go party and they do it and they'll have some. So, interesting.
It wasn't Kuznetsov's cocaine. It was somebody else's.
Yeah, and then the last one was, no, I think the majority of players are way too conscious of what we put in our bodies these days. Guys don't even drink that much anymore. You'll have a glass of 2 or wine at dinner or beer on the plane, and guys don't get much into that, which obviously I don't think is necessarily true. And I don't think if you ask a player if there's a cocaine problem and he does cocaine, he's going to say, yeah, there's a problem.
Oh, yeah. You want to see my stash?
All right, question number 7, and then they went hard on the drug question. They're like, yeah, we're gonna go back to being light here. Which road city do you dread the most?
Anywhere where it's crappy to play.
Yeah.
I would say
Pat
anywhere
was
it's
here, he'd be ripping
cold.
Brett. Yeah. If Pat was here, he'd be ripping Brett because 3 of the 4 top cities are cities that at one point Pat has said Brett lives in. So
all Canadian. Right? So Winnipeg then. I think he lived in Winnipeg.
Winnipeg was the number 1 answer. 42% said they hate to play there. Buffalo was 34%. So a lot of that's a road city they dread the most. Edmonton was 10%, Calgary was 4%, Ottawa was 4%, Carolina was 4%, Columbus was 2%. But the big ones were Winnipeg and Buffalo, and I guess Edmonton. And for the reason you think, Winnipeg is cold, it's dirty. You walk around the city, you feel like you need to wash your face after you go outside. Is one of the answers the players had. One of them said Winnipeg's just depressing. You don't even want to leave the hotel to get a cup of coffee. And again, one guy said, I'm sure a lot of people said Winnipeg. And his answer for why he liked it was, he says, we're close to the casino. If you want to go for a half hour or whatever, wherever you go, you can get out to the casino. That is definitely Evander Kane.
Right, stacks and stacks.
But the overwhelming answer is Winnipeg, and a couple guys did not like Buffalo, and they didn't really give too many quotes from that. One guy just said Buffalo's brutal. I don't think anyone looks forward to going to Buffalo. Second last question for the players: do you have gritty fatigue? Yes or no question. They got answers for.
Yes.
Surprisingly, the players
No.
There's nope. 72% said they don't have gritty fatigue. 28% said yes. They all seem to think it was hilarious. They like that the NHL's trending in that direction. That it's not just super boring. A lot of guys were just saying their kids love it, so they do too.
Yeah.
And then the one quote they had for about people getting it, they said it's too much. He's everywhere. I feel kind of bad for the other team's mascots. It's like everybody forgot about them. And then one guy said, I'm surprised he's still getting so much attention, to be honest. Thought it would wear out by now. I guess I don't really mind him. He's, like, not affecting me. It's just a lot. Both of those guys probably play for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't think any of those players or the fans that are in there where Gritty's grabbing their phone and chucking it on the ground.
All right, last question before we wrap the show here. The last question from their player poll. Do you have a Twitter burner account? They had a yes or no answer to this one.
Them. Probably, yeah, I would think. I think it's safer that way to have a burner account and then not have it linked to you.
Yeah, and even those polls,
if they're younger,
I think players would still tend to say no, even if they had one. But 32% yes, 68% said no. And a lot of guys can say like they have burner accounts, but they just kind of use it to search things about themselves or follow different things that they don't want to follow on their personal account, like follow golf or get results for golf tournaments. What they said. One guy said he has one, but he never tweeted from it. Another guy just said he keeps up on the news and follows the media guys in his market to see what they're saying about him, but he never responds to it. So
yeah.
And then like you would expect, a lot of guys saying, I'm not a big social media guy. I don't even know what I would do with it. One guy, which is probably Ryan Getzlaf, said I've never logged on to Twitter in my life. So you would expect that you would get a little bit. I'm sure because the players they asked probably range in age. So again, I think if you're asking a bunch of guys over 30, a lot of them probably don't even have Twitter. Yeah, let alone if they have Twitter, it's probably run by somebody else. And then if you ask the younger guys, I'm sure some of them have it, like they said, just to kind of follow what other media guys are saying about them. Because if you're a player on social media and you have a personal account, you're likely not following all the media guys in your market and looking at what they say on your regular account, which kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it. Like I said, if you're looking for Don Cherry Chalk, that's coming on our rant show this weekend for Patreon. We're looking forward to digging into that. I think all three of us on that show.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
That's the big topic around the NHL right now is the Don Cherry firing. I'm pretty amped up to talk about that. I feel like we're all on the same page, So somebody might have to play devil's advocate for that one, but but I don't know. We'll see. I haven't really even gotten, I guess, your opinion or Pat's opinion on that situation. So that could be an interesting topic for that one. So our regular show in terms of this one, we will be back on
Saturday or Sunday.
Saturday or Sunday. Sunday is the scheduled show, but we try to get all three of us on it when we can. So we're still working out to see what date is the best for all three of us. And we'll let you know on Twitter. So it'll be either Saturday or Sunday. It'll be at a time where you guys can catch the show a little bit easier. That's what we've been trying to do, is throw it up a bit earlier than our post games, so you guys can come on. And we'll have a couple Ducks games to talk about, as well as some NHL topics, hopefully, that we can throw in there as well.
Yeah, and then just a real quick reminder, on the 23rd, which is Saturday, the Ducks play Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay at 4 o'clock. We are having our first watch party of the season. It'll be at the new Lamppost location in West Yorba Linda. If you're familiar with the old one, it's the building next to it. Just a little south on Richfield, I believe is the street name. So love to see everyone kind of come out. We'll probably be promoting it a lot more on social media in the upcoming days leading up to not this Saturday, but next Saturday.
All right, well, make sure you guys get out to that. The last one we had, I was there for. I think this is the first one of this year. So the last one we had, where there was a train that was just nonstop throughout the night, which was interesting.
And Eddie doesn't ever want to let anyone forget that. Every
that
time
was
we
a
bring
big
it up,
talking point from a lot of people, that the train was there and it bothered them. And
well, no train here.
Yeah, so I made it out to 2 this year. I won't be at this one, but Pat and Jason will be at this next one, and it's hopefully at the best venue we've had yet, which is what it seems
Yes,
like.
I've been to this one. This one is the best one. So especially for watching it, much bigger, projection screen TVs all over the place. Bar setup, everything's great.
Yeah, and it's shaping up to be a good game because Tampa Bay, no matter their struggles this year, that's going to be a fun game, I think, for the Ducks to play. And is that an away game or a home game? It's a away game, right? Because it's a watch.
It's a watch part.
Well, you could. We don't have tickets to the game.
Okay, Ed. Okay, Ed.
I don't go to enough of these. All right, so.
All right.
That's my excuse. Anyway, we'll be back Saturday or Sunday. Just stay tuned on Twitter, and we'll let you guys know. And we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye, guys.